Okay, good morning. We're making a start on Hi6018, which is the digital history course in the master's programs in digital humanities here in UCC. And in this first week, I've laid out a few things that I want you to do, and I'm going to introduce them here very briefly. So, on Blackboard, in the course page on Blackboard, we go into the content, and the first folder, lo and behold, is called Introduction after the course info. In the introduction folder, there are 4 items, and we're going to work through them in order. So the first, which will open in a new tab, is the Valley of the Shadow. The Valley of the Shadow is one of the oldest and one of the standard setting digital history projects on the web. It is the story of 2 communities in the American Civil War. And it is reconstructed from documents and images of the time, and it is presented on the web very much as a museum where it looks at the communities on the eve of the war, it looks at what happened during the war, and it looks at the aftermath. And in each of these sections, primary documents have been gathered together and been made accessible and organized. If we wanted to see those documents prior to this, we would have had to have gone to the various archives, mostly in America, where they're stored. They would not have been accessible to us. The people who created this not only digitized the material, but they organized it as a presentation which illustrates the change that happened in these 2 counties during the war year. So they have a range of records, and any of these links on the map will click through and bring you to, for instance, the Civil War era newspapers, and you can search them, or you can browse them by date, or they have indexed them by topic for the 2 counties. So they talk about race relations, arts, entertainments, leisure, whatever, and you can pick a topic and you can click through and find articles on that topic. There we go. That turns into, let's go for immigrants because it's topical at the moment, and see what news stories come up about immigrants to Augusta County, and you can see there's a link which will eventually bring up the image of that, the text and a summary of that newspaper, and the carry on in different columns of it. So it's a transcribed text. And there you go. All the various pieces from that news story from Western Virginia, from the Alexandria Gazette, about the emerging disunion in Western Virginia. So that gathers all of those together, and basically what I want you to do is take a wander around this online museum. We all know a little bit about the American Civil War, so it's not completely strange to us. What we're really interested in is how they constructed this online exhibit, and how, in the choices they made, they created a story. That's what curation really is about. You're putting together a story and you're telling a narrative. The other thing, the next item, is an article. And the title of the article is "The Differences Slavery Made." This article was written by the 2 people, William Thomas and Edward Ayres, who created the Valley of the Shadow. And this is an exercise in writing an academic article based on digital sources, where the sources are available publicly, and the process of writing the article was done semi-publicly, and the article was presented online. So the intention right from the beginning was that this would be public scholarship right out there in the open. So, for example, the methods then become important because they're talking about how they use digital tools to compare the 2 communities. So it is an article which is entirely born digital, presented digitally, uses digital tools to analyze sources which are available in a digital form. So it's very much right in there in terms of how to do it, and it provides a lot of the background to the online exhibit. There's a relationship between the 2. And that is something you'll come back to, particularly when you're creating your digital artifact for your dissertation. You'll be creating a digital artifact and you'll be writing about it, and the two belong together. So that makes this an important and very useful article. There are not enough pieces like this out there. The third piece is Ed Ayer's ongoing work since The Valley of the Shadow, on which has gone into many directions, but one is a project called the History Harvest, which is a methodology that they use for teaching by gathering materials from local communities. So there's a number of course outlines and syllabi on the site where people have taken this idea that you go into a community and you collect primary material from it and you digitize it and you create an online archive of a community as a project. That's what they did with the Valley of the Shadow, and they then essentially roll that methodology out and support and help a growing community of historical scholars who use the same thing to teach their students about research methods and how to gather material, how to collect it, and how to archive it. So some of those examples are interesting, and obviously right here in Ireland, the Letters of 1916 project, for example, is a classic example of how you do this kind of history harvest work. And it gives memory back to the people, because the people can take the stuff that they found in their local library, in their local archives, granddad's letters in the attic, and bring them out, and they can be scanned, digitized, collected, put online, makes the memories accessible, makes it possible for other people to find them and make connections. And that's one way in which digital history is a powerful tool for restoring access to history to the people. So that's interesting. Don't expect you to look at all of the things they've done. Maybe look at one or two. See how it works. Some of your projects will be of that nature. Every year there are projects which people do of that nature. The final item to look at is William G. Thomas's blog. Now, we are introducing you all to the idea of blogging and reflective practice as an intermediate stage in academic writing, where you roll out perhaps thoughts and ideas which are not fully formed and not polished into final academic writing, but you're using the writing to give them shape, to expose them to a community of scholars and friends who will look at them and may give you feedback and information. And William Thomas is one of the longest running digital history bloggers. He doesn't blog every week, but when he does, he puts thought into his posts. And what he puts there, as I said, is not necessarily material which is right now ready to go into a major historical journal, but at some point in time it will become part of his published work. And in the meantime, a lot of what he has to say is very interesting. It just so happens that at the moment, the most recent, which is from February actually, is What is Digital Scholarship, a Typology, where he tries to group different types of scholarly projects that use digital tools together, and he's come up with a proposal or a diagram which would help us to categorize digital scholarships. And I happen to know that that's part of an ongoing discussion where the American Historical Association has just published guidelines for assessing historical artifacts, digital artifacts on a scholarly basis. So he was part of that discussion, and this was perhaps part of his contribution to it. In terms of how we assess in a scholarly way the value of digital artifacts that people create. And how can we therefore create a set of criteria which allow us to create worthwhile, useful contributions to digital knowledge. And then he has some other stuff about digital liberal arts, which is interesting. It's his reflections on them. Everything he writes is interesting. I don't want you to read it all, but certainly those two are worth a quick look, in that they not only touch on important topics, but this also shows you how a very well-established scholar can have a public platform where he can speak and write informally to a community of friends of which you can be part, about the nature of historical scholarship. So really, I have to create a forum, but really what I want you to do, and I'll put the writing discussion prompt on the start of the forum, which I'll add here after the link to his blog, I want you to just, give your initial reactions, what you like about these, how perhaps any of these things might fit with the areas of research that you've already discussed that you might be interested in, how they relate to your understanding of history, how they differ from as an approach to history, what would be most people's exposure to history to date, which is, of course, the book, or increasingly the History Channel, and how those things fit together. We know the book, we watch the History Channel. This is a different way of presenting. This is the field. And as we move along, what's happening in our culture is that the book, the television program, and the web are all coming together. So being able to tell the story digitally, which is what Thomas and Ayres and various other people have done, is now an important part of the skill of how we tell stories about our past in order to make sense of how we got here. So that really is the thing to think about. How does this way of telling the story of the past, do you think, empower and change the way you would approach it as we go on and explore digital history? So it's an orientation, it's a survey of some points in the landscape. It's not necessarily, particularly deep, and we're not looking for earth-shattering thoughts here. We're just standing on the beach, taking a look around, deciding what the shape of the terrain is. And I'm just looking to get your immediate reactions to this again so that we can establish that we're all roughly at the same place, and then we shall press on. And now, so thank you very much, and we'll talk again later.